This time we'll discuss enzyme immobilization. Enzyme immobilization defined as a process of confining the enzyme molecule to solid support over which a substrate is passed and converted to product. It also can be defined as the confinement of enzyme molecule into or within a support matrix physically or chemically or both in such a way that it retains its full activity or most of its activity. An immobilized enzyme is an enzyme which physically confined or localized in a certain defined of space within retention of their catalytic activities and which can be used repeatedly and continuously. Let's see this one. This is the brief history of enzyme immobilization. The first step, during 1815, immobilized enzymes were used empirically in industrial processes such as production of acetic acid and wastewater treatment. A second step, during the 1960s, a single enzyme immobilization system was introduced. Then this system used in the production of L-amino acid, isomerization of glucose, etc. Then the third step, during 1970 till 1975, multiple enzyme immobilization methods, including cofactor regeneration and cell immobilization, were introduced. Immobilization allows one to reuse the enzyme for an extended period and enable easier separation of the catalyst from the product. Additionally, immobilization improves many properties of enzymes such as performance, inorganic solvent, pH tolerance, heat stability, or the functional stability. Several reasons why immobilized enzymes are important, such as protection from degradation and deactivation, reuse of enzyme for many reaction cycles, lowering the total production cost of enzyme-mediated reaction, ability to stop the reaction rapidly by removing the enzyme from the reaction solution, enhance stability, e.g. separation of enzyme from the product, and the last is a product is not contaminated with the enzyme. So let's see this picture in the right side of this slide. This is the enzyme. Then this enzyme immobilized and used to produce many kind of product. The major component for enzyme immobilization include enzyme. It can define as a biomolecule which accelerate many biochemical reactions. It acts as a biocatalyst which mediate the conversion of a substrate into a product but never used up by the substrate. Support a matrix. It is a material which facilitates the imprisonment of the enzyme. A support matrix must have the following properties that we have discussed below for the efficient immobilization. Then mode of attachment. The different mode of attachment between the enzyme and support matrix are explained below in the method of enzyme immobilization. In general, involve a physical and chemical method for the immobilization of the enzyme. Matrix is a material which facilitates the imprisonment of enzyme. Matrices used for enzyme immobilization are usually polymeric material such as calcium alginate, agar, polyacrylamide, and collagen. However, some solid matrices such as activated carbon, porous ceramic, and diatomaceous earth can also be used for this purpose. There are several ideal characteristics of a support matrix. Let's see this one. Mechanical strength, biocompatible, stable, inertness, regenerability, ease of the repetition, expansion of enzyme specificity, reduction in product inhibition, reduction of microbial contamination, and cost effective. The matrix must have physical characteristics such as mean particle size, hydrophilic character, and a mechanical strength. So let's see this one. Now let's move to classification of matrix. Matrix can be classified into two sources. The first one is organic and the second one is inorganic. Organic can be a natural polymer and a synthetic polymer, and inorganic can be natural material and a processed material. The organic matrix is divided into natural polymer, as I have already mentioned before by using the diagram. It shows favorable compatibility with a protein. Polysaccharide such as cellulose, dextran, agar, agarose, chitin, alginate, etc. Protein, chitin, the protein, collagen, albumin, and carbon are natural polymer. And the second one is synthetic polymer. It shows high chemical and mechanical stability, polystyrene, polyacrylate, polyacrylamide, polyamide, etc. This one, those things are example of a synthetic polymer. Then the inorganic matrix is included into natural mineral, for example, bentonite, selite, xantholite, silica, charcoal, etc. And the second one is a processed material, for example, porous glass, metal, and metal oxide. Based on the binding property, method of enzyme immobilization classify into physical and chemical process shows in this diagram. Let's see one by one. Method of enzyme immobilization. We can divide this into physical method and a chemical method. For a physical method and chemical method, we can see that absorption, entrapment, encapsulation, covalent binding, and cross-linking. Now let's move to absorption method. Absorption immobilization is a method which is used to immobilize enzyme by the attachment of enzyme on a carrier surface via weak forces. The metric particle size must be smaller than 500 Armstrong. Different carrier material are used in this type, like mineral support, for example, alumina oxide, clay, organic support, for example, stud, and modified separose and ion exchange resin. Absorption immobilization is a method which is used to immobilize enzyme by the attachment of enzyme on carrier surface via weak force, electrostatic force, hydrophobic interaction, and hydrogen bond. It is the oldest and simplest method. In this type, enzyme adhere to surface of the water insoluble carrier metric. The binding is non-specific, like electrostatic or hydrophobic affinity binding to a particular ligand. Several carrier material are used in this method, like mineral support, organic support, and modified separose and ion exchange resin. Those three I have already mentioned before. In discussing this absorption method. Several methods for immobilization by absorption. A static method. It is an efficient but time-consuming method. It involves immobilization of enzyme and carrier molecule without agitation. Then dynamic process. It involves the mixing of the enzyme with the carrier under constant agitation. Reactor loading. It involves transferring of both enzyme and carrier in the reactor with the agitation of the whole content. It is widely used for the commercial production of the immobilized enzyme. And the last is electrodeposition. Here a carrier is kept proximal to the electrode proximal to the electrode in an enzyme bath, after which an electrostatic current is passed through it. It results in the movement of an enzyme toward the carrier. At last, the enzyme gets deposited on the surface. The advantage of absorption method, it has no pore diffusion limitation. It is a simple and economical method to conduct. No reagent are required in this method. There is a limit loss of enzyme activity. It causes less disruption to an enzyme. It requires minimum activation step. The absorption enzyme can recycle, regenerate, and reuse. And the last, it has a high loading efficiency of an enzyme. Then disadvantage of absorption method: it has no pore diffusion limitation. It is a simple and economical method to conduct. No reagent are required in this method. There is a limitation loss of enzyme activity. It causes less disruption to enzyme. It requires minimum activation step. The absorption enzyme can recycle, regenerate, and reuse. It has a high loading efficiency of an enzyme. So we can see that this advantage and disadvantage of absorption method seem like the same, but in discussing this one, we should deeply concern one by one. Then let's move to entrapment method. Entrapment immobilization refers to the capture of enzyme within a polymeric network or microcapsule of polymer that allow the substrate and product to pass through but retain the enzyme. After entrapment, lipase protein are not attached to the polymeric matrix or capsule, but their diffusion is constrained. In entrapment, the enzyme or cell are not directly attached to the surface, but simply trapped inside the polymer matrix. Enzymes are held or trapped within the suitable gel or a fiber. It is done in such a way so to retain protein while allowing penetration of a substrate. Enzyme entrapment involves the inclusion of an enzyme into following a matrix: gel, involve entrapment of an enzyme inside the gel matrix; fiber, entrapment of an enzyme inside the fiber matrix; and microcapsule involve entrapment inside entrapment inside a microcapsule. The advantage of entrapment method: it is enzyme loading capacity is high. It is a rapid method. The enzyme distortion is low and easy handling and reusing. And disadvantage of this method: the diffusion of substrate and product create difficulty. It causes leakage of low molecular weight enzyme. There might some change of microbial contamination, and it also causes enzyme inactivation and sometimes loss of enzyme activity. So let's see this one: attachment to a solid support, entrapment into a matrix, this one, and molecule cross link. Now let's move to encapsulation method. Encapsulation immobilization is done by enclosing the enzyme in a membrane capsule. The capsule will be made up of semi-permeable membrane like nitrocellulose or nylon. This type of immobilization is done by enclosing the enzyme in a membrane capsule. The capsule will be made up of semi-permeable membrane like nitrocellulose or nylon. In this method, the effectiveness depends upon the stability of enzyme inside the capsule. It is the membrane confinement method. An enzyme confined within the semi-permeable membrane of a capsule in an aqueous solution. This process allows the exchange of medium such as substrate and product, but not an enzyme. The effectiveness of encapsulation rely upon the enzyme stability. The encapsulation method can be achieved by following ways, such as encapsulation in a reaction vessel. It involves the partitioning of a membrane. It involves the partitioning of a member by a semi-permeable membrane. One chamber contains enzyme, whilst the other contains substrate and product. Encapsulation by hollow fiber membrane. It involves entrapment of an enzyme inside the semi-permeable matrix, such as cellulose, diacetate, etc. Here, an enzyme trapped inside the space of the matrix. Then, microencapsulation by chemical polymerization. The enzyme molecule enclosed inside a microcapsule using 1,2,6 diaminohexane. And the last is encapsulation by liposome. Here, an enzyme binds to the concentric lipoidal membrane of the liposome using phospholipid. Now let's see the advantage of encapsulation method. There is no enzyme decay. It does not affect enzyme activity. It is a simple method to conduct, and it possesses a high loading efficiency of an enzyme. Then, disadvantage of encapsulation method. It makes the use of a carrier that has a pore size limitation. The effectiveness of cost production. Now let's move to a covalent binding method. Enzyme immobilization by covalent binding can enter the biocatalyst to the support firmly and avoid the seeding and decay of the enzyme. In this manner, an enzyme molecule binds to the carrier by a covalent bond during this process. The functional groups that are participating in the binding process are NH2, NH3, carboxyl, hydroxyl, sulfur, oxygen, etc. There are several methods involved for covalent binding, such as diazotation. It involves bonding between the amino group of the matrix and tyrosyl or histidyl group of an enzyme. Between the amino group of the matrix and tyrosyl or histidyl group of an enzyme on the reaction with natrium nitrate and hydrochloride by peptide bond. It involves bonding between amino or carboxyl group of a matrix to the carboxyl or amino group of an enzyme. During this, a matrix is chemically treated to bind with the active functional group. Then, cyanogen-bromine activation. It involves the binding of glycol group of a matrix with an enzyme by the activation of CNBR. The last is by polyfunctional reagent. This process involves bonding between the amino group of the matrix and amino group of an enzyme. Example, glutaraldehyde. In this case, this one is a bifunctional reagent. Then the advantage of this covalent binding method, let's see this one. It provides a high binding strength between an enzyme and a carrier. There is no enzyme leakage. It is a simple and widely used method, and the process is not affected by the pH or ionic strength. And disadvantage of covalent binding method, the naturation of enzyme occurs during the immobilization, and only a small amount of enzyme can be immobilized. Now let's move to cross-link method. A cross-link enzyme is when a bunch of enzyme molecule group together and then form cross-link between the enzyme to hold the group together. Enzyme immobilization by cross-link is an irreversible method performed by the formation of intermolecular cross-link between the enzyme molecule by a covalent bond. Advantage of cross-link method, let's see this one. There is little or no enzyme leakage. It yields highly stable enzyme. It is a simple and cheap method to carry out, and it has wide applicability in the commercial production of enzyme. And disadvantage of this cross-link method, it causes enzyme inactivation, and the polyfunctional reagent used in this process generally cause enzyme denaturation. Let's see this picture in the right side. See this one, covalent binding, cross-link, entrap, encapsulation, and absorption. We focus on this immobilization method. I think that's all for this time. Thank you for your attention.